Hello and welcome back, the one that you've been waiting for. Scaling down, scaling up and creating a ready-to-wear perfume. So to create perfumes, you need to start using neat oils. Now, so far you've been using the diluted oils, and I want you to continue using the diluted oils whenever it comes to you experimenting or smelling or continue to train your nose each day. Use the diluted oils. Remember, because they are mostly alcohol based, so you won't be wasting a lot of material on fragrance strips and with creating experiments. So if you're going to make a new perfume, let's say, and you want to start from scratch, then you will go back to your diluted oils and you will experiment. But then when you want to start actually creating them and putting them in bottles to either give away to family, create for yourself, or to have it for a fragrance range or for clients, then you have to start using the neat oils. And I'm going to show you the ratios then that you need to use based on your experimenting formulas. But as I want to reiterate, only when you are happy with the experimental blend should you now go on to creating neat oils. Waste not, want not. That's what I always like to say. I don't like wasting really expensive oils. So be certain that you're happy with the blend that you've been experimenting with, and then you can go on and create a perfume. And we're going to be using the neat oils, and we're going to be recreating whatever experiments you've been doing. So you've created your themes. I hope that you have been creating your themes and that you've been leaving them to macerate, and I hope that you've been creating some beautiful accords and completing the fragrance brief, and you've written a story, and from that story you've broken it down and you've made some accords, and those accords and those themes we can now recreate them using neat oils. And you're going to be using the same methods as before. So the methods that entailed using pipettes and using scales and stickers and recording everything on the charts and giving everything a reference number, use exactly the same methods and use the same good practice, just neat oils. That's the massive difference. There's one major difference though. The oils that you diluted previously at 1% in your experiment, so the cloves and the musks and the absolutes and the labdanum and the oud and oak moss, etc. So all of those oils now that you previously diluted at 1%, you're now going to be scaling them down for your experiment. And in your blend, your neat blend, you're going to be using 1/10 of what you originally recorded. Why? To keep the consistency of the fragrance blend. Because all of the other oils that you were using were in a 10%, and that's the majority of oils in 10%, but the ones that were in 1%, if you were to use them now at the full strength, they would completely overpower the blend because you're not keeping the consistency. So you have to keep the consistency. So the ones that were at 10% and 1%, the difference between them, you see? So we need to keep that consistency going throughout the theme. So when we're creating neat blends for oils that were previously diluted at 1%, we're going to be using them at 10% now. I hope you bear with me. I've got some charts that you're going to be able to look at. So don't get too confused, but make sure you write it down. All other oils, so oranges and lots of the florals, the distilled florals, the citruses, the woods, most of the woods actually, apart from oud, and yeah, the spices, apart from clove and cinnamon. So all of those oils that are diluted at that were originally at a 10% for your experiments, you're going to be using those at full strength. So you don't need to worry about reducing the quantities of them. All will be revealed. So let's talk more about scaling down. I hope you're not too confused yet. So if you look here to the left, if you look at orange, that was at 10% in our experiment, wasn't it? Yeah. So you're following a formula now. You had a previous formula. I'll be showing you the themes in a second. You're going to be using the same strength. So you're going to be now using them neat, and you're going to be using them at full strength. Musk and clove and the other oils I've just mentioned, and everything that's at 1%, you're going to be using 1/10 of them. That's to be able to keep the consistency, because you were using only 1% before. So if you were to use musk and clove now at full strength like the orange, the musk and clove would completely dominate the blend. Yeah, you see? Let's have a look. Here's an example. So here was your floral theme, and one that you should have now, and you should have made it already, and it's diluted. So this is your experiment, and this is the ratios that you have. So you have sweet orange, bergamot, ironone, jasmine, rose, hedione, benzoin and sandalwood. Now can you look at the rose, jasmine and benzoin, the ones that are highlighted? These are ones that you have diluted at 1%. So how are we going to make this composition now of this theme? Now we want to recreate the theme. How are we going to do it? We're going to add just as much orange, 0.5 grams. We're going to add just as much bergamot, 1.0, and the same with ironone, because they were all diluted at 10% strength. But what do you think it's going to be with rose? We're only going to be using 10% of it. What's 10%? 1/10. What is that? 0.2. 0.20. So can you see now, because it's no longer diluted, it's neat, you need to use 10% of it because of the very small dilution that you had before. Because 1% is 10% of 10%, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so that's why you're having to use it now and scale it all down. And once you get used to it, it's really simple. Can you see all you're doing is you're just moving the decimal point over. So instead of 2.00, you're making it 0.20. So you're simply moving that decimal point to the left. Now let's have a look at jasmine. Jasmine was 1. Now we're going to make it 0.1. Because if we were to make now rose and jasmine and put 2 grams of rose and 2 grams of jasmine, it will dominate this blend too much. And you're going to be using a lot of it. It's going to be using a lot of oils, and your blend isn't going to be consistent with the one that you've already created, because here on the left you're using them at a 10% less than the alpha ironone, for instance. So when you go over to the right and you make a neat composition, it should also be at 10% of what the alpha ironone is. Do you get it? Let's have a look at the next one. Hedione. The same, 2 grams, so we use that at full strength. Benzoin, what's benzoin going to be now? Now that we're using it neat, because we diluted it at 1%, what's it going to be? Same as jasmine, 0.10, 1/10. So you see, it's so easy. It's 10%, you're just moving the decimal point over, and you're making it, instead of 1.00, it's 0.10. And sandalwood is the same, because we used that at full strength. So you've now got less of a blend. You've only got 6.4 grams in your beaker. But this is in your workbook. You can take a look and you can recreate this theme, or if you've got your own theme. So that's it. All of the oils, just make a note. Make a note. You can make a note in your journal or in your formulation chart, or however it is that you've been recording things and recording notes during these lessons. But all of the oils that you diluted in your experiments at 1%, when you use them neat, you're going to be reducing it and scaling them down to 10%, 1/10. Let's have a look at another one quickly. So here we've got a Shipra theme. When we had the Shipra theme diluted, these were the ratios. And if you can see here, we've got labdanum, musk and clove highlighted because these were the ones that we have diluted at 1%. I've got rose here, rose distilled and PEA, you can see here, over here. We've got this. Now I've got this at 1.8 and it's not highlighted because I didn't dilute this at 1%. Rose Absolute, I definitely dilute it at 1% because it's an absolute and it's stronger. But I find that distilled rose or PEA, you don't need to dilute it at 1% because you'll lose the smell of the rose. It'll fade. It's very weak in itself if you dilute it at 10%. So 1% you'll lose it. All you'll be able to smell is alcohol. You can do a 5% if you wanted to, and if you wanted to cut costs. I've done that before. In your experiments, and then that's a whole other calculation. So I just leave it at 10% for the sake of this to keep things clear. So now I want to recreate my Chypre theme because I am going to create a perfume for myself with a Chypre theme. So I want to use it neat. So what are the ratios going to be? Orange, I'm still going to use 2 grams. Lily of the Valley, 2 grams. Ylang Ylang, I'm still going to use 0.5. Rose, I'm still going to use 1.8. So you see, I'm using all the full strengths to recreate my Chypre theme. Patchouli as well, the same, but now labdanum, 0.10. What do you think musk is going to be? Exactly, it's going to be 0.20. 1/10 of it. What's clove going to be? 0.02. So you see, you're moving. It's almost like it's so easy really when you think about it. It's like you're just moving it that way. You see, you're moving all the figures that way and putting a 0 onto the front of it. So, and then moving the decimal point. But yeah, I mean, if you just look at what's 10% of 0.20, it's 0.12, and that's what you use. So it's so easy. Once you get used to it, it's so easy, and you will get that neat composition, and it will be exactly the same as your diluted experiment, unless of course you make a little mistake and you put an extra drop in there. Then make sure that you make a note of it. We'll do one more very quickly, Oriental theme, just so that you really get the hang of it. So here's another diluted experiment that you should have already created, an Oriental theme. Your ratios were bergamot 1 gram, pepper 0.6, clove 0.4, jasmine 1.2, rose absolute 1.8, ylang ylang 1, tuberose 1, patchouli 1, and labdanum 0.50, and vanilla 1.5. So this is your experiment. Let's have a look at the neat composition. Again, we're creating now neat, so we're now using neat oils. So we're going to use in a new tumbler, create a new theme, and add 1 gram of bergamot, 0.6 of pepper, 0.04 of clove, jasmine 0.12. What do you think rose absolute is going to be? Remember, we just move the figures to the right and add a 0 and move the decimal point to the left, or just do it on your calculator. Exactly, it's 0.18. Ylang Ylang is going to be the same. What do you think tuberose is going to be? 1 at the moment. What do you think it's going to be now we're using it neat in a neat composition? Exactly, 0.10. Well done. Patchouli 1. Come on, labdanum, what's this going to be? The last one. 10%? 0.05. Exactly. And vanilla will remain the same. So the total that you've now got is 5.59. So if you wanted to create a bigger theme, you can scale it up. Now you can double it. So if you wanted to create more, a stronger theme, if you want to create, what's a really good thing when you know what you want to do, when you start scaling up and scaling up your perfumes. We'll talk more of it in module 3. But when you want to scale up and make a theme, don't, if you know exactly what it is that you want to do, then don't just keep creating really small amounts. You need to now maybe times it by 10, times it by 50, and make a big pot of it, you know, so that then you can, and make sure that all the calculations are right when you do times it. Yeah, but if you wanted to create, let's say 50 times of this, then you're going to have 50 grams then of bergamot, which is quite a lot. 50 grams of bergamot, and then so on and so forth, 50 grams of lang lang, etc., and 50 grams of patchouli, and then the rest. I can't do the maths in my head, but you get the gist. So this will be about 75 grams. So yeah, that's what you can do when you want to start creating perfumes. Is you don't need to start making them on very small scales like this. Once you've got the hang of it, you know what you're doing, you create like a big pot of it and then start composing. Then you can make lots of perfumes all at one go rather than making itty bitty bits. You don't want to do that. You'll be there forever, trust me. And don't forget, all of the oils that were normally diluted before in your experiments at 10%, you're just going to use those at full strength in your compositions of a neat blend. Only the ones that were diluted to 1% will be used at 1/10 or 10%. And like I said, refer to the dilution ratios chart for assistance. You've got that in an Excel spreadsheet. I like putting it in a Excel spreadsheet as well, so that you can make your own notes to the side of it, and you can continue to modify that as well as you go along. So it's a good tool for you to have. I do like Excel. It's good when it comes to it because it does calculations for you as well if you do the format in the cells. Maybe go on YouTube and do like a quick course in how to use Excel and how to use it for mathematics. It's really, really useful. Yeah, and don't forget, when you're experimenting, you're going to make a new fragrance, let's say, in a couple of weeks for a client, which I hope you are. You're going to take the brief and you're going to experiment first. You're still going to use diluted oils for your experimenting. So let's look again very quickly, recap over the last lesson, 10 steps to perfume creation. Then I'm going to reiterate step 10. So your objective, you need to break down the story or mind map, create a theme based on the personality or the brief, create a fragrant fan with the accords that you've written down in the breakdown and the theme. Smell them from the bottles, from the diluted bottles first, to see if they complement each other before you start experimenting. It saves time and money. And then record the weights based on your fan, based on the impact, based on your brief. There's so many different factors when it comes to recording the weights. If jasmine and musk, let's say, higher impact oils, even cis 3, very high impact oils, you obviously, to make a balanced perfume, you will use less of them. But you might have a client that says, I just want this perfume to smell like fresh grass and daffodils. So what are you going to do? You're going to use more of it because you're going to use those as a shining star. So that's why when it comes to recording your weights for your accords, you need to consider not just the impact, but you need to consider what the brief was from your client as well. If somebody wants a perfume that primarily smells of jasmine, then you're going to overkill it, aren't you, really, with jasmine and saturate it. So that's why you need to consider the weights as well, not just the impact. So compose, then you compose the accords and you add the accords then to the theme, and then macerate for 24 hours, evaluate, modify and scale up and create. So this 10 steps to perfume creation was using your diluted oils. Okay, so up until here you've got diluted oils all the way through your fragrant fan, creating weights because you're experimenting still, right? Composing, you're making the accords separately, and you're making the accords separately to the theme. You're not shoving them all into one bottle. Everything has to be a separate process. We'll cover that in towards the end of this lesson. And I'll tell you why, and it's so simple. So yeah, don't forget to then macerate your experiment, evaluate, modify, and once you're happy after modification, then you scale up and create. So this is the step we're on to now. We're on to step 10. We're scaling up now. We've just done scaling down. So let's scale up and make a perfume. Don't forget again, when composing a complete perfume, use neat oils first, and remember the 1/10 rule for the 1% oils. And when you feel ready to create complete perfumes, always create a neat blend before diluting in alcohol for a complete perfume. If you dilute it before, or you start using, you're not going to have the same strength. I had a question actually yesterday from a student asking, well, what about when I want to make room sprays and body mists? You know, they're going to be at different strengths than these oils that I've been diluting at 10%. Forget that 10%. What you've been diluting, that's just experiment. That's an experimental collection that you should have on your own, on your little, if you have a perfumer's organ, or on your shelves, or in a cupboard. Those are for experimenting only. That's not for making perfume. You're not going to make perfumes from those diluted oils, because everything's at 10%. If you want to make an eau de parfum and you want it at 15%, or you want something that's at 20%, you know, so that's why neat oils, and then later you can decide what strength you're going to be using, and that's when the alcohol comes into play. So now you need to create your chosen theme. So from your formula that you've done and the theme that you've already created, choose one of the themes, have a look at your brief. So don't forget to go to your brief, and you need to go to your story. So have a look at your story. Make sure that you know which perfume you're going to be creating. You need to then choose one of your themes, and whichever theme you choose, you're going to recreate that now using neat oils and using the principles that I've just shown you. So if you choose, like I am going to do, a Chypre theme, you're going to be creating it using neat oils, bearing in mind the 1% rule, and then leave it to macerate. Create your theme first, neat, leave it to macerate, then you go on to your accords. Even if it's just for half an hour while you're creating your accords, create it, shake it, lid on, make sure you've got the sticker and the reference number on it, make sure you've got the formula written down, make sure you've written down the scaling down formula. So musk, if it's 1%, if it was 1 gram before, it'll now be 0.1 gram. Make sure you've written that down in a new formula chart. Make a note of the total grams, because you might want to double up the perfume as well. If you want to double up your theme, you can do. Because then it'll give you more options for creating more perfumes. Then you're going to create your accords, again doing the same thing. So those accords that you were happy with in a diluted form, you can now recreate them using your neat oils. Not forgetting the 1% oils need to be scaled down. I know I keep reiterating it, but it's so important. Even have it on your wall to remind yourself. Sometimes when I'm working with glasses that I have my pipettes in and stuff, I put stickers on there and I write down ratios of oils. Like I'll write down what you know, the percentage of, if it's 10% or if it's 1% or if it's 5%. I'll write down what it actually is. If I'm creating something that's 40 grams, then I know how much it's going to weigh, etc. To have things like that and little tips and little stickers on glasses and things like that that you're using, it's really handy to refer to. Then you don't have to go scrambling through your books. And once you've got your accords and your theme, you now need to combine them all together to create a perfume using the 2/3 rule. Remember the rule when you create a theme? What's the rule? You need to use 2/3 of your theme in a perfume, and you need to use 1/3 of your accord or accords if you've created multiple. And that's so simple. That's how simple the Melly method of making perfumes is. And this is pretty much similar to what I learned at the Grass Institute of Perfumery. So 2/3 of the theme, and one theme of your accord or accords multiple. So if you have 3 accords, the total sum of them should be 1/3 of your perfume, and 2/3 of it should be your theme. I've told you before you can change these ratios, but I'm teaching you how I was taught, and I do change the ratios myself from time to time depending on what perfume and what I want to create for a client. So let's do a scenario of the 2/3 rule. I'm going to create a 15-gram blend, not a full perfume at the moment, just a neat blend. So I am going to use 10 grams of my theme. It's already been created. I've already made it. It's in a beautiful bottle over there, macerating in my cupboard. And I'm going to get a new bottle now, or a new jug. You can use a jug actually. A glass jug on the scale. Put the jug on the scale and pour in 10 grams of your theme. And then use 5 grams of a single accord. Okay, so you can see, because it's a 15-gram perfume, your accord must be 1/3, not 1/3 of the theme, it should be 1/3 of the total blend. 1/3 of the total blend of 1/3 of 15 is 5, 2/3 is 10. And it's that simple. And you put these together in a jug, get a jug, put it on your scale. It couldn't be that simple. I'm going to put it into steps now. Get your scales, zero it. Get a jug, put the empty jug on your scale, zero it again. Get a pipette and put 10 grams of your chosen theme into said jug. Once you reach 10 grams, zero it. Now add 5 grams of your single accord. If you make any mistakes and extra drops, make notes of it. Remember, a single drop can change everything. Give it a little stir with a pipette. And that's it. You've got a 15-gram blend. You can put it in a jug or you can put it in a tumbler if you wanted to. Perhaps a tumbler would be better because then you can put a lid on it and a sticker, and then you can leave that to macerate. Yeah, I know I'm going on again about maceration, but now you want this theme and this accord to blend beautifully together, don't you? And you already know, because you've experimented with them in diluted forms, you already know that this combination and this ratio is working out really well for you because you've experimented with it already. If you haven't, experiment it diluted, because I don't want you to make this neat if you've not experimented with it diluted, because you're wasting materials if you don't like it. Okay, let's have a look at another scenario. Same again, a 15-gram pure blend that's going to be used in a final creation of a perfume. So a pure blend now, theme. So get your scales, get a fresh tumbler, get your theme, 10 grams, put it into your tumbler, and then accord number 1, 2.5 grams, accord number 2, 2.5 grams. What are these two accords adding up to? 5 grams. 5 grams is 1/3 of 15. So you've got 2/3 of your theme and you've got 1/3 of the total blend will be 5 grams. Scenario 3. Your theme, again, 10 grams. It's another 15-gram blend because I want to keep it consistent. It's easier for you to learn. Keep it simple, remember. Your theme is 10 grams. We're going to have 3 accords now. and we're going to have them all at equal ratios, 1.6, 1.66 and 1.66 approximately. This is approximate. You can make sure that they add up. You can do it differently if you wanted to, but as long as all three of them add up to 5, then that's fine. You can do 2, 2 and 1 if you prefer. Perhaps if you have in a chord number 2 where you have perhaps pipe tobacco and leather and a rich smokiness, and you want that to be more predominant throughout the perfume, then perhaps you might add that at 2 or even 3, and then put a chord number 1 and 3 at 1 and 1. But you should have done this already in your experimenting. But I think at the moment, what is clear and what's a good way to start and practice is if you have equal ratios. So if you do have equal ratios of 1.66 for a chord 1, a chord 2 and a chord 3, if you have them all in equal amounts, what are you able to do? You're able to detect if one of these accords is dominating the other two, or if, for instance, you perhaps want one of them to dominate. Like I said, if you want jasmine or smokiness, tobacco, leather, if you want that to be more predominant in the blend, then what you can do now is say, do you know what, I've got them all at equal amounts, I know how they work at equal amounts, but what I want to do now is I want to increase the aroma of the pipe tobacco and the wood, and that's in a chord 2, so I'm going to add some extra. But this you should have been doing in your experiments previously. So this really is a final blend, but it's just showing you now. Because when it comes to your final blend, you shouldn't really need to modify, because you've been experimenting, and now it should do, if you've done it correctly, smell the same but much stronger. So that's it. It's really simple. Keep your accords in the same consistency. Revert to your experimental formulas. It couldn't be more simple, really, and that's it. You've got your theme. I mean, when you've got a theme, you're 2/3 of the way there to creating a bloody fantastic perfume already, right? You really are. And then you just have to add your accords to make it a unique fragrance for your client or for your range. So let's have a look at the perfume composition data sheet that I have here. Now this is a different form. It's pretty much the same as the others when you're creating your chords. I've just modified it and changed it for your final blend. So you're going to put here formula, give it a perfume name. I've called mine Francais, and then it's the blend. So you know that what's on here is the neat and the pure blend. Okay. We're going to record the intensity. We can do that later. Got the reference number, and we've got the date that we're creating it. So here you don't need to put all the grams, because in your other sheet you've already recorded all of the grams, haven't you, in here? So you don't need to make more work for yourself. You give yourself a headache. I don't want you to have a headache when you make perfumes. It should be a pleasure to make it. So all you need to do here is then put what accord you're putting into this blend. So you're putting your Chypre theme, you're putting a chord 1, and you're putting a chord 2. You might have different reference numbers, whatever that you have for these. Make them unique so that you know what they are, and just make a note of it here. But for simplicity's sake, I've just called them a chord 1 and a chord 2. So that's it in that column. And then in this one, you can just, if you wanted to, you don't even have to, but I like to, because it's nice to have a look at what is in your blend overall. You don't need to look at the grams, but overall, if you want to record the grams and make more work for yourself, it's entirely up to you. Please do so and go ahead. It's absolutely fine. You might want to record it that way. But here I know what I've got in my Chypre theme, I know what I've got in my accord number 1, and I know what I've got in my accord number 2, and I know how I'm making it. So I've used 10 grams of the total of these oils, the Chypre theme. Accord number 1, I've put 2.5 grams in the tumbler, using these oils, and accord number 2 with these oils I have used 2.5 grams. So I have now got a neat blend, of Francais blend, it's neat, and I have now used 15 grams and it's in there. There's a little box here for notes. So that's it. You just use that to record what you're putting into your neat blend, and now you've got complete neat blends. And the beauty of previously having separate accords when you're experimenting is that you have the ability now to be able to separate them and go, this one isn't working, this one needs a little bit more of this. So you can modify, you can evaluate them individually and you can modify them individually, rather than if you've got them all into one, you don't know where you're going wrong and you might have to start from scratch all over again. It might just be one element. Let's pick on the blue one. It might be this blue bottle here, it might be this accord here that's not quite working, so you'll modify this or ditch it, start again, and then you'll be able to then create a complete perfume. Do you know what I mean? It's easier to modify one part of the perfume rather than have to modify the whole of it. And this is when you're experimenting and when you are making neat blends as well.